So, welcome to the Adventures in Learning podcast. I am so excited to be bringing you all this podcast today. I had the honor of working at this beautiful museum in Pennsylvania where the staff is delightful. The exhibits are so kid friendly and so joyful. And the Lewisburg Children's Museum is just a gift in Pennsylvania. So, if you get a chance, you need to go. And today you get to talk to Mary Beth Harris and Michelle Heinzelman, who are two of the amazing staff who make it all the magic happen. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
So, I had the fortune of getting to look at your beautiful museum about a week ago, I guess. How did you both wind up in the museum world?
You want to go first?
Sure. I ended up at the Lewisburg Children's Museum a year and a half ago after 12 and a half years in public education as a high school math and special education teacher. So the age group jump has been pretty big, but I'm really enjoying using my educational background in an informal setting through the programming that we offer here at the museum.
Okay. And Mary Beth?
Yeah, so my story is a little bit longer. So my background's actually in nonprofits and fundraising. And when we moved to Pennsylvania 7 years ago, I decided I was going to take a motherhood break. But I was still really like, I wanted to use that nonprofit, fundraising side of my brain, even though I was staying home with my boys. And very early on, I kind of got pulled into the museum. They had just launched a few months before I moved here. And so the board pulled me into, informal meetings about fundraising first. And then very quickly, I became a member of the board. And then I was on the board for about 4.5 years. And last summer, our former executive director left for a new position. And the board was like, oh, Mary Beth, come step in for a little while as interim. And I really wasn't planning to go back to work at that time, but the longer I was here, the more I fell in love with the museum. And I had always come with my boys when they were growing up. And so I was very familiar with the museum, and having sat on the board, I was very happy to kind of, the longer I was here, the more I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to stay. Like, it's a really fun job and a really unique place to really make a difference.
Well, and you just hit on something that my museum brain is going, how did you guys do this? It's a brand new museum. I mean, you've celebrated what, your fifth or seventh birthday?
So they opened in the fall of 2017. And they were not open. We weren't open 3 years whenever COVID hit. So really a brand new museum. And honestly, sitting on the board through that period and then being the director kind of on the other side of it, like it's almost like a relaunch, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because we were just kind of beginning to think outside of launch phase whenever COVID hit. So it's really exciting time to be at the museum, because I think we're really beginning to look at like, okay, long term, what do we want 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and being able to dream.
So you've had to make that stretch through COVID. You've had to start up a brand new museum. What are some of the things that sort of went into that initial planning? And then where do you guys see yourself taking this 5, 10, 20 years from now?
Yeah, so I think the most exciting thing for me is that because we've been open for 7 years, we're really at a place where a lot of our original sponsors are wanting to talk about renewing a sponsorship or doing something new and different. And so having those conversations at this point and knowing that we've kind of survived the worst thing that could ever happen to like a hands-on child facility is really it's really freeing, but it's also really exciting to be able to dream with those sponsors and donors of, okay, what's working in the museum, what could we change, what could we make new and exciting. And I think you know, the other piece of it is really being able to take a step back and say, okay, we've been doing programming, you know, for 5+ years now. What has worked? What hasn't worked? What do we want to expand into? So it's a really exciting time to be at the museum.
And Michelle, I know that you share sort of that love of informal education. What have been some of the big joys of your job? Because you're working now with really preschool through elementary school age kids. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. It's a big shift from teaching high school math and special ed for so long. But I do really like the younger age group a lot too. I think the biggest like new program really that I want to take the most ownership and credit for is probably Messy Monday. So every Monday from 10 to 11, we set up some sort of sensory experience that like the kids are probably only going to be interested in for 5 or 10 minutes. And like moms, dads, and caregivers aren't going to want the setup and the cleanup at home. So it's a really great way to get their kids those sensory experiences, but the cleanup is all in the museum. So we've done some really cool things there. The water table is always a favorite, but we make oobleck. We go outside and make mud paint and all sorts of things. So that one has been really cool. And you get some of the same kids every week. And so when they start to like recognize you and look forward to it and they're happy to be there every Monday, that part is really rewarding too.
Yeah, we definitely have members who come every Monday specifically for Messy Monday. And I really think that Messy Monday is a really great example of where the museum can really step into in terms of informal education. You know, there's a lot of parents out there who do have resources or the capacity to, you know, create these great educational spaces within their homes. But I think it's really important to remember that that doesn't happen in every home around us, that either, you know, the family may not have the resources for all of the special STEM stuff, or they may not have the time or capacity to be able to kind of do all of those special experiments and projects. And so the museum is really a place where I view it as a really unique place because it's not a separate place for kids. It's a place where families and kids come together to learn, and that we have the, you know, the capacity and the facilities and the technology and the equipment that really expands upon what kids are, if they're doing school or they're doing preschool, it may expand upon that, or it may be the only opportunity they have to do some of these extra activities.
And how are you partnering with like teachers and the community to be able to reach these families, the ones who maybe don't have the resources or the capacity?
Yeah, so we have a fairly extensive outreach program. If you want to talk a little bit about our outreach program, Michelle.
Sure. In the summertime, we go to multiple libraries across the 5-county area sponsored by the United Way, and we do outreach programming at all of those libraries. We also have a pretty strong relationship with the Selinsgrove Rec and the Donald Peter Center in Lewisburg, where there we can offer some after school and summer camp opportunities for kids who are a little bit older. We take like the Lego kits and have Lego Club at Donald Peter, but we also attend all of the Lewisburg downtown festivals, and a lot of the downtown festivals, even in like Selinsgrove and the surrounding area. So we do try to be out in the community as much as we can so that people learn about the museum and get a taste of what we can offer. Obviously, the programming we take out of the museum is a little different than what we can offer when we're right in the museum itself, but we do try to keep a pretty full outreach calendar.
Yeah, and the other way that we really partner with schools is through field trips. So we have a pretty robust field trip schedule. We have a day a week that's reserved for field trips exclusively at the museum. And then we've gone through the entire museum, and we have educator guides that line up with the state standards of, when you're in this room, here are some of the things that your kids are going to be experiencing or learning that are going to line up with those Pennsylvania state standards that are really beneficial for teachers whenever they're justifying going on that field trip.
We also try to focus a lot on making it accessible to everybody. So once a month, we have sensory friendly family night. And that allows us to keep the museum open after hours, and we like turn some of the lights down, turn the sounds down. People do register just so we can keep the crowd at a manageable number, but it is free to attend, and that allows our friends with some additional sensory needs to still be able to come and enjoy what the museum has to offer without the overstimulation of normal operating hours.
Yeah. And just hearing the feedback from parents of that specific event has been really just almost heartwarming that, you know, they are so grateful for the opportunity to come to a space where it is reserved for their child that maybe has sensory issues or other needs that, and everybody else who's here at that time is in the same boat. And so it's a good practice to being out in a public space, but in kind of a safe public space. And so, you know, one parent talked about like the fact that like her child went to the bathroom in our bathroom for the first time in kind of a public space. And that was a huge win for them.
And I think you just raised a really interesting point in that the wins for families may not be the things that we would necessarily be checking off as we're talking to funders or, you know, telling our story to the public, that they're very intimate things that are part of their family life, but you're setting the stage in a safe place for them to explore together. And
Yeah.
I think that that's important too.
Yeah.
Let's shift a little and talk about informal education and learning through play. How would you define that? What is it and what is its role in the museum?
That's a really great question. You know, I think having two boys of my own, like they are constantly learning and reinforcing what they're learning through play. So I'll give you a good example that relates actually to the museum. So my boys actually attended one of our summer camps earlier this summer that was Time Traveler Camp. And they have like for the past month since the camp happened, they have like incorporated things that they learned in that camp into their play. And even in the car ride this morning, we were having a conversation about hieroglyphics because of the playful learning that they encountered at the museum camp. They've now like, we were having a conversation about the Rosetta Stone and how important the Rosetta Stone was. And so I really think that the more opportunities children have to kind of experience the world in a way that is fun and engaging and kind of sticks with them. And then having them have opportunities that allow them to reinforce that through their own creativity and their own play is really beneficial in the long term.
Yeah, and for some of our younger friends, like in Messy Monday, I think the focus is much more on process than outcome. Like we want them to enjoy making the mess. We're not necessarily worried about an end result or an outcome. So really focusing on just processing and experiences and that side of education instead of like a right, wrong, or a desired outcome.
Yeah. Because I mean, there's so much when you're a small child that like, don't do this, don't do that, like stay in a line, like, and those things are needed, but it's also really beneficial for kids to be able to be in a place where they're leading and they're directing kind of what's happening and what the play is like. And so I think Messy Monday is another really good example of that.
Well, and I noticed as I was going through the museum with you all last week that you've created these opportunities for risky play in the best possible way. That you've got these rooms that are themed and everything goes together, but then they've got the opportunity to drive their crazy coupes through the hallways following a line, and they can explore going from space to space. And I liked sort of that balance between safety and coming out of your comfort zone. How much intentionality went into planning things like that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I mean, I was not a part of the founding team, and Michelle wasn't either, but I know that so we're actually located in an old high school. And when the old high school moved out, our co-founders really wanted the museum to come into being because they wanted something educational in this building. And so we occupy a small part of the old high school, but I know that just having talked to guests and visitors to the museum, kind of that separate room, classroom, and like the connecting hallway of the roadway is actually really beneficial for kind of keeping kids like moving throughout the museum, but also not losing track of them. Like if you come with 3 kids, like you can say, okay, we're going to play in this room. And I think that it allows kind of that contained exploration, if that makes sense.
And you've got sort of everything from the the farm market and sort of the grocery store to outer space. Um, are there new themes coming in? Do the themes change up? How do you decide what each room is going to be in terms of play and creativity?
Yeah, I mean, I would say right now I have a long list of like things in my head that I'm like, oh, we could do this or we could do that. What if we did this? I would say a lot of you know, what came into being in the original museum was looking at our local community and seeing what is close to children that we want them to be able to kind of enter into an adult world and experience. So we have one room that is very body and medical focused. So we have a little doctor's office where kids can pretend to be the doctor. There's a digestive system that they can crawl through. We have one room that is a grocery store. It's a Wise grocery store. Wise is our, local grocery store chain, and they have made it a Wise grocery store. It looks like a Wise store whenever you go in. And
it even had a scanner.
Yes. Oh, no. We have 2 registers that are actual working registers through Wise that they can scan everything and it comes up. So, and then our main exhibit really is about highlighting a lot of the agricultural aspects of our local area. So we have a play cafe, we have a farmer's market, we have a silo. We're working on a new exhibit that hopefully we'll be able to announce later this year. And then, we're really fortunate to be able to have this really amazing exhibit through the NICE network, which is the National Informal STEM Education Network. And that's our Sun Earth Universe exhibit. And so we're really excited about that. It's a really good fit for the space and for the room. And we see a lot of parents kind of sitting there also doing the exhibit with their kids. So that's kind of the dream is parents interacting with their kids while in the museum space.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's sort of what good informal education does, is it's not just for the kids, you're providing opportunities for the families to engage as well. And I love the fact that you're engaging in all of these partnerships. NISENet was always a favorite for me when I was in the museum world. I love the collaboration and the way that they put together hands-on learning. But you guys also had something really cool going on with college students. How are you collaborating with your local college to be able to support and enhance what you do?
Yeah, having Bucknell in our backyard and then having Susquehanna University like just down the road is really beneficial to us. The college kids are great in terms of helping with staffing needs and programming and outreach. We use every avenue possible to get them to volunteer at the museum or like get paid through work study. We have some college interns that help out. And then we also use AmeriCorps during the summertime to get a student through that program to help run all of our summer camps and things like that when our normal college helpers are all home on summer break.
Oh, that's amazing.
But yeah, we probably have 12 to 15 like regular college workers or volunteers who are with us.
That's kind of extraordinary and a model for other museums. That's very cool.
We also do a lot with student groups as well. So we have a big event in the fall called Munchkins and Pumpkins, which is always right around Halloween. And so everybody comes dressed up, but we have all of these kind of spooky themed STEM activities throughout the museum. And we have college volunteers that help out with that event. And then we also have, student groups that come and are like, oh, we want to do a program. And so we partner with
the Student Engineering Board, the Society of Women Engineers, Student Government, Athletics, and the foreign language teaching assistant help us run a really cool Passport to the World program in the spring. So
wasn't there another future
yeah, there
doctors
is a
that
biomedical something. Yeah.
That's so cool. So you've really run the gamut on everything in terms of students as volunteers, but also students as program leaders.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. So if I'm a parent or a family member and I'm thinking about coming to the museum, but maybe I'm a little anxious, I'm worried about how my kid's going to behave, I'm worried, am I going to get my money's worth? What would you tell that parent?
I would say your child's going to have, if your child likes playing, they're going to have fun in the museum. I often talk to parents who are like, oh, I have a 3-year-old. Like, are they too young to come? And I'm like, no, your 3-year-old is like the perfect age to come. Generally, what we tell parents is if they are walking, they are probably going to have fun and find activities in the museum that they're going to enjoy. And that goes all the way up to, 9 and 10-year-olds who are coming to the museum to play. I think it depends on the kid, on kind of the upper end age range of how much they enjoy playing and if they have younger siblings that are going to engage with them while they're here. But yeah, I think, I think it is rare that we have a guest who is unhappy with the experience. And I think that it is, it's a fun place to spend an afternoon. Or a morning, or we have some guests who come all day. They, leave for lunch and come back. So I really think that on the whole, most people are very, very engaged and very satisfied with the museum.
Well, and it's definitely a joyful place. So last question I kind of want to ask you today is what are some of the things that people can expect coming up in terms of cool things that are happening at the museum this fall?
So we have the return of some programs that have been new within the past year or so. I think the one I'm probably looking forward to the most is called Art Adventures, where we partner with the Samek Art Museum at Bucknell. And the kids get to sit right in the museum space and learn about the art and then create their own. So we'll offer that as like a kind of an outreach program, but it's really more of like a class that they'll register for ahead of time. But the two coming up the soonest, I guess, would be our Dino Day Expo. So we're going to have a day all about dinosaurs on August 3rd. And then on August 22nd, I think that Thursday is our Bubble Bonanza. So when all the older kids go back to school, we celebrate the first day of school with just a bubble party outside.
Bubble machine, bubble activities, Michelle usually goes home and showers afterwards because she's covered in bubbles.
Bubble solution everywhere.
Yes.
That sounds exciting. And so if people are planning a trip, they should definitely look at coming to see you all this August. And I'm guessing there are all kinds of amazing events that are going on through the fall. Where would they find more information?
So the website is lewisburgchildrensmuseum.org. Or you can find us on our Facebook page, which is also Lewisburg Children's Museum.
And you guys also have Instagram, is that right?
We do. We have an Instagram as well.
And I suggest following them because I'm always in museum envy wanting to go and play. They always have something going on. Like, honestly, I don't think there's a week that you aren't busy doing something really fun. So then last question. I said the other one was the last question, but we're not going to leave it with that. Here's the real.
I'll give you one more, Diane. It's okay.
One more question. What do you do to play? What's the best part of your job? What do you do to play?
I'm again going to default to Messy Monday. So we actually rebranded that to Messy Monday when we both started. And there was a meeting one day where Mary Beth was like, please take this the right way, Michelle, but you're really good at making a mess. I love Messy Monday. Like, it's not like we set it up and I'm off to the side. Like, I am right in the slime and the mud with all the kids too. Just like she said at Bubble Bonanza, I'm usually sudsy bubbles head to toe. So I really enjoy just participating in the programs that we plan.
Yes. Well, I have to add one thing to that. So we recently had an outreach event and the activity was like a soapy car wash. in our sensory table, and one of the museum assistants who was there manning it, she's like, Michelle planned this, didn't she? Like, this looks like a very Michelle like activity. But yeah, so we love Michelle for that reason. But I would say I have, the benefit of having two kids who are still fairly young. And so they are always kind of encouraging me to play Legos or build with Magnetiles, or we're very much in the builder phase of childhood right now in my house. So we have a lot of construction going on in the various kits. And so that's probably the place that I experience the most play on a week-to-week basis.
Well, Michelle and Mary Beth, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. And folks, do yourself a favor. If you are driving anywhere near Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, go visit the Lewisburg Children's Museum. It's a real gem.